the question came, do you consider yourself Asian American? This was the first time in my entire life, at 31 years old, I had ever been asked this question, because I never thought about it. And I'm sitting there thinking of all of the Asian American kids I grew up with, growing up in San Francisco, predominantly Asian American community, and thinking of what they would say if I said yes, you know? Thinking of my white dad, my Filipino mother, who was very much Americanized and wanted to be part of American culture, never being treated a certain way. And then I'm thinking of all, especially in Hollywood, the struggles that Asian American people have had to go through, have had to press against a ceiling, for better, for worse. Some have made it through and persevered. Some weren't as lucky. And I'm thinking about that struggle. And so if I say yes, am I pretending to have had the struggles they had? Like, I just kept seeing all these people in an instant, in a second, going, like, they would be so mad at me if I said, yes, I have had the same struggles as they have, because the truth is I haven't. Because as a white passing person, I have white privilege, and I was treated differently. So in that moment, I've never thought about this. And I'm thinking about them. And surely there must be something said of somebody who, even though their identity is Asian American, has never even thought or been asked, are you Asian American? Never thought about it. So I say no.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of all those people. I am Asian American, but would you consider yourself Asian American? Again, thinking of it the first time in my life, like a whole lifetime of experience and racial identity, like having to, like, occurring to me in the flash of a second. Now, there was a very unfortunate backlash to this, because I think this, you know, rightly so, I think a lot of people in the Asian community who saw this were like, what the fuck? What the fuck? How could you say this? And there was an article by another young lady who wrote for, you know, for like a blog or something. It wasn't in the New York Times, but of course I see it, and I was deeply, deeply upset that she was so upset, because she felt like I had somehow like turned my back on who I was. And thank you for giving me the space to talk about this, because there's a lot to get into.
Yeah.
I think I said during the course of the interview, or at some point, I said, just quickly, I said, you know, I don't look Filipino, which is nice, or comma, which is nice. I don't know where the clause or the comma came in. And when you read something like that, especially if you're Filipino, you're like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? Like, oh, what you're saying, it's nice because you don't look like me, like. And in my mind, I never thought about it like that. My whole MO in life has been defying people's perceptions of what they think they know, right? So, you know, if we put, and I gravitate towards things that do this, you know, when you see, I don't know, an old man lifting a really heavy thing, or you see, you know, I don't know, I'm using gender stereotypes, but if you see, like, I don't know, like a really girly girl, like playing heavy metal, things that you don't expect, you know, that are unfair expectations, and being able to break those perceptions is something that I love in my life. I love it from other people, I love it from other experiences, and I love doing it myself. And I've always loved the fact that I don't look Filipino, not because I don't want to look like a certain thing. I never even thought about it like that. It wasn't until somebody said that I went, oh my God, that does sound fucked up. I meant that I am not what people expect. I've always reveled that my whole life, I'm not just like a white guy. I've loved that I'm a half guy. I love telling people I'm Filipino, that I'm not Italian, I'm not Mediterranean. Oh, you're never going to guess. I'm Filipino-Irish. And people go, whoa, that's so crazy. I didn't expect that. And I go, yeah, that's like who I am. And so I've always liked being able to not be what people think I am. But of course, I have no way of explaining this in a flash of a second, because again, it's such a huge thing to think about, because I have not had the years of practice of what it is to show up for an entire race, for an entire race of people. And now it being in a public sphere, you know, I've had to kind of, there's no like guidelines and rule book of things to be said and what you have to show up for. All right, cool. Here's the thing. You're now a voice of an entire people. Here's what we like to say. Like, I don't know, because this goes back to my thing that I always like to talk about, that I'll get into in depth on a much bigger level for something else one day. But I've told you, I have this thing that has come up several times in our conversation, that there's a difference between experience and identity. And the biggest difference is you get to choose one. Mm-hmm. You get to choose your identity. You don't get to choose your experience.
Yes.
This was prevalent in what you're talking about, your mom's experience of life, your experience of life, my own experience of life. You know, that happens to us. That is a passive, literal experience. Whereas identity is something you get to choose along the way. And this doesn't even necessarily have to do with your own ethnic background, but, you know, because you can identify yourself in a whole lot of different ways. But for a second there, before that interview, I thought that experience was what made you one thing or another. And it isn't. Even though it highly influences what you choose, it does not define what your identity is. Because for the first 30 years of my life, my experience was, for the most part, not part of the Asian community saying, hey, you're one of us. You're one of us. So I didn't feel like that. So I didn't feel like I could say that. And it wasn't until it became public, because I played a part that was half Asian, like, oh, I didn't know it was Asian, that I suddenly felt like I got that my identity lined up with how other people saw me. And this is kind of what's that? To see themselves. And I go, great, I'm happy to do that, because before you didn't see yourself in any version of me. So I didn't know how to show up for you.
Yeah.
You know? So this just goes to, I was just going to kind of wrap this up with, this is, I think, a common quandary for a lot of mixed race kids, particularly if you're half white.
Absolutely.
There's a great play, Jeremy O. Harris wrote a play called Slave Play. And it deals a lot with Black identity in America. And it's a really wonderful collection of different experiences being talked about on stage. And my buddy, Matt Jones, now Sullivan Jones from high school, I can't believe this, we went to high school together. He's mixed race, he's half Black, half white. And he has a great line in the play that I remember when I saw this, I was like, I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Even though it's particularly talking about half Black identity, I think I took it as a biracial identity thing.
Sure.
He said, I think someone's grilling him of like what he is, like, are you Black, or like what do you consider yourself to be?
Yeah.
And his line is, I'm kind of just whatever people will me to be. Mm-hmm. And that really struck a chord with me, because you know, if you're a mixed race kid, if you say you're one thing, there's always going to be half of people that go like, quit trying to be like us. You don't know what it's like. You know nothing. You don't know what our experience is. You don't get to like use our flag as your own like thing. Like you're not fully part of the club.
Right.
Or there's going to be another half that's like, why is he running away from who he is? Why isn't he more proud of like, so
well, Obama talked so much in interviews about like the experience of people saying that he wasn't Black enough.
Yeah, it's a common thing. You're not Asian enough, you're not Black enough, you're not Latin enough.
And how he had to be very fluent in white spaces and almost be better than any white person to get to be where he is, just because of the expectations and the limitations of being a Black person. And so you're right. I think for a lot of these people, there is this like identity crisis, and it can come at any time in life. And because you are more white passing, I think it's good that you had to reckon with that and be like, wait a minute,
me too.
What actually is my identity, and how does that impact how I show up for people who look like me, or might also be Filipino, might also be mixed race. And unfortunately, as a public figure, people do expect you to speak out on their behalf. And
right.
it's not a measure of, I understand that there's like a certain imposter syndrome with like, I'm not qualified to speak out for this or that person, and I don't have the training to like be an activist and stuff. But I think if there's anything with it, I've learned over the past year with last summer's social justice protests, and unfortunately over the past couple months with the shootings in Atlanta and stuff, I don't think there's a right or wrong way to speak out against what is wrong. And I was so touched when I saw your IG live that you did about being an Asian and Irish guy, and like thinking about how that tragedy happened on St. Patrick's Day. And that must have been such a conflicting experience for you. But I was so proud that you went up there and you were like, I am Asian American. And
Yeah.
I see you guys who are suffering, and I am one of you. Even if it's not something that you've experienced for your whole life, I think it brought me a lot of solidarity.